Hello, and welcome to the final lesson of the introductory series to the Cascade Format. Today, we're going to be continuing our discussion about conjunctions in groups. Just a quick recap of the first three lessons on subject, predicate, and indentations. The essential components of a complete sentence include the who, or the subject of the sentence, and the do, or the predicate of the sentence. So in the sentence, after school the dog barked at the children, the subject of the sentence would be the dog, and the predicate of the sentence would be barked. At the children describes barked, and that is why it is indented past the word barked in the cascaded version of the text above. After school also describes barked, and it describes when the barking happened, and that's why it is also indented past barked. Now let's do a quick recap on the first part of lesson 4 where we talked about conjunctions. Remember this sentence from before? The boy saw the yellow, red, and orange sunset and smiled. Here we have two conjunctions. There are two times where we see the word and, but they conjoin different things. The first and conjoins yellow, red, and orange, and the second and conjoins saw and smiled. So if I ask what is the subject of the sentence, the subject is pretty simple, the boy. Now if I ask what is the simple predicate, there's actually two of them. The simple predicate is saw and smiled. So the complex predicate is saw the yellow, red, and orange sunset and smiled. This is what it would look like in the cascade format. Notice that for both conjunctions, the elements being conjoined are aligned one level past the conjunction itself. So if we look at yellow, red, orange, these are all aligned one level past and. And if we look at saw and smiled, which are further apart and separated by material in the sentence, we see that saw and smiled are also at the same indent level, one level past the and that conjoins them. So now we're going to be looking at how to combine simpler sentences into making more complex ones. Consider these two sentences. The boy saw the sunset and the girl smiled. What are the subject and predicates of these sentences? In the first sentence, the subject and predicate are the boy and saw. In the second, it's the girl and smiled. How could we combine these small sentences into one larger sentence? We can use conjunctions to do that. Remember that conjunctions include words like and, or, but, or yet. So for example, the boy saw the sunset and the girl smiled. We can combine both of these actions into one single sentence. And notice now that the entire sentences are what's being aligned by the word and. So what are the members of this conjunction? The members of this conjunction are the boy saw the sunset and the girl smiled. And so you can see that each sentence, the boy saw the sunset and the girl smiled, each sentence is one indent level past the word and is aligned to the other sentence. Continuing to discuss these sentences, they can each be considered something called an independent clause. This means that they can stand alone. They present information and they present a full idea that can be read as a complete sentence. Let's consider another example. The dog saw the treat. The dog started to drool. How could we combine these sentences into one single sentence? Well, like before, we could use the word and. The dog saw the treat and the dog started to drool. Or we could use a connective word. Connective words provide a little bit more meaning to sentences. So if we were to just combine the dog saw the treat and the dog started to drool, what if we wanted to add information about why the dog started to drool? We want to make it clear to the reader that the dog started to drool because the dog saw the treat. Seeing the treat is what made the dog drool. So adding a connective like the word because allows us to understand this relationship between the two sentences. We now know that the first sentence, the dog saw the treat, when we add because to it, we know that that first sentence caused the second sentence. So how do we now combine these two sentences? We add the word because, it turns that independent clause, the dog saw the treat, into a dependent clause, meaning that it can't stand on its own. For example, if I just said because the dog saw the treat, there's something missing there. Right? It doesn't feel like a complete sentence. It's describing something that's about to be explained, but it doesn't actually give a full meaning for us. But when we add the dog started to drool, then we get the bigger picture of what's being said. So just as a recap, dependent clauses cannot stand alone. Dependent clauses can stand alone. And so we can combine simple sentences into more complex ones via a few different ways. The first, if we have two independent clauses like the dog saw the treat and the dog started to drool, we could just use a conjunction like and have the dog started to drool and the dog saw the treat, or vice versa. We can also use a connective, such as the dog started to drool and because he saw the treat. We also saw this from lesson 3. Think about the phrase after he saw the treat. This is also a clause, and we know that it's dependent because it doesn't feel like it can stand alone. The word after implies that there's some event that this phrase is describing. And that phrase is the dog started to drool, which is an independent clause. So when did the dog start to drool? After he saw the treat. The dependent clause contextualizes or adds context to the independent clause. And so preceding contextual information can be an entire clause. Sentences also start with conjunctions sometimes as well. Consider this sentence. And the dog started to drool because he saw the treat. Here, there's a conjunction and, but it might be confusing because there seems to only be one member of that group, right? And this is because there are still two sentences, but one is being hidden. You might see this in longer passages where an author may decide to start a sentence with and it is always implied that there is a preceding sentence in this case. And so that is why we start with the word and everything else in the sentence gets indented past that word. So, in summary, words can be combined into groups by using conjunctions. And, or, but. Conjunction becomes the head or leader of the group. Everything being combined is indented past this conjunction, like the first 3 puzzle pieces above. These groups always move together. These groups themselves can be added to one another by combining independent and dependent clauses together using conjunctions, but they can also be added using connectives. And so if you have a connective, a dependent and independent clause, you can combine those without you needing any conjunction. But if you're combining 2 independent clauses, you need a conjunction in order to combine them. That concludes the Cascade Format lesson series. Congratulations, and we hope that you found this helpful. Stay tuned for more lesson series, including activities using the Cascade Explorer view, writing exercises, and much more. Thanks.